My boyfriend is a genius. But I'm not smart enough. However, he will seriously comment on palace intrigue dramas when I watch them. And he will also fly into a rage when others say that I don't deserve him. He said, Aurora is very nice. And she is the best in my heart. Later, he was specially recruited into the top university in the country, while I stayed in our local area. During the 4 years of our long-distance relationship, we would call each other every day, and we would take turns visiting each other's cities during holidays. We were both earnestly and firmly maintaining this relationship, until he participated in a competition when Orion Mensch and the talented junior schoolmate he met during that competition for the 17th time. I knew that our relationship was about to come to an end. At 8 p.m. I called Orion as usual. But he didn't answer the phone for a long time. A long-distance relationship is arduous. And with the slightest carelessness, it will end in a bad ending. Therefore, Orion and I made an agreement that we would take turns to call each other at 8 p.m. every day. If something delayed us, we would send a message in advance to notify the other person. He didn't answer. So I opened WeChat, and the chat window was still at the conversation from yesterday. Worried that something might have happened to him, I made another call. This time, the phone rang for a full 54 seconds before Orion finally answered the phone. I didn't speak immediately. I just listened to the sounds on the other end. It seemed to be in a KTV. Among the noisy sounds, someone was singing, and someone who was drunk was shouting wildly. In short, it was very lively. But Orion has always hated liveliness since he was a child. Orion. Are you looking for Orion? He's gone to the restroom. And he left his phone with me. If you have anything to say, you can tell me directly, and I'll pass the message on to him. The other person interrupted me. It was a girl. And her voice was very pleasant. She mentioned Orion very naturally. He left his phone with you? I couldn't help but ask. The other person hummed and said in a matter-of-fact tone, Yeah. Orion and I have a good relationship. What's the problem with me keeping his phone for him? I grew up with Orion since I was a child. Because of his experiences when he was a child, he hates liveliness and is even more resistant to others touching his personal belongings. Especially things like a mobile phone. Besides me, he wouldn't easily let anyone else keep it for him. So I didn't immediately believe what the girl said. My boyfriend, my childhood sweetheart since I was a child, I would give him my trust. There were some faint sounds coming from the other end again. As if someone was walking over. Soon, but the voices of Orion and that girl talking came from the other end of the phone. Orion. Someone called you. Orion seemed to have just taken the phone and murmured, It's Aurora. I forgot to send her a message. I was just about to speak when the girl on the other end interrupted me again. Who is Aurora? You. Ah ha ha faff. She coughed twice. And Orion's tone immediately became tense. What's wrong with you? Did those brats make you drink? You're not in good health and can't drink alcohol. I'll go to the front desk and get you a glass of warm water. I listened to Orion's voice. He has always been an indifferent person. And a tone of care and tenderness like this used to be only for me in the past. But now, he forgot about me who was still on the phone with him and went to take care of another girl. I held the phone and listened to the commotion on the other end. Orion seemed to casually put the phone in his pocket, then went to get a glass of warm water for the other person. There were a few more whispers in a low voice. Finally, it was as if he suddenly remembered something and quickly took the phone out of his pocket. He said with an apologetic tone, Aurora, I was a bit busy just now. I didn't mean to not answer your call. Yeah. Very busy. Busy taking care of another girl. I suppressed the soreness in my heart and tried to use the calmest tone possible. Then I asked him, Who is the girl who answered my call? When he mentioned her, Orion's originally apologetic tone suddenly changed. And there was a faint smile in it. Her? That's Stella. I told you about her. The girl who tied for first place with me in the national competition. She almost beat me. That was just an accident. When the next competition comes, I'll definitely be the only first-place winner. Stella interrupted him. With a bit of arrogance and confidence. Which made Orion, who is usually indifferent, actually laugh out loud. Okay. Then I won't hold back next time. Orion. Who asked you to hold back? Even if you go all out, I will definitely not be inferior to you. Then let's have a competition. Then, went out a low sigh. I hung up the phone. There was no particular reason. It was just that Stella's words had aroused Orion's competitive spirit. And Orion had completely forgotten about me, who was still on the phone with him. It's really boring. Orion is a genius. Since I can remember, everyone around me has said so. He showed an intelligence different from that of ordinary people since he was a child. No matter what exam it was, Orion was always the undisputed first place. He is too smart. So smart that it makes an ordinary person like me seem a bit stupid. He is a genius. But I'm not smart enough. We are both orphans and grew up in the same welfare institute. We are childhood sweethearts and also family. Our relationship goes beyond love and family affection. And we are the only ones in each other's lives. We established our relationship in high school. Everyone said, except for her face, Aurora doesn't deserve Orion at all. Why can she be Orion's girlfriend? But Orion would seriously refute those people. Aurora is very nice. And she is the best in my heart. During the summer vacation, he would stay up late with me to watch palace intrigue dramas and seriously comment on them. Just because I like them. He would also fly into a rage when others said that I didn't deserve to stand with him. Even though we had a long-distance relationship for 4 years during college, I never thought that our relationship would encounter a crisis. Neither time nor space could affect it. Our relationship transcends love and is indestructible. Although I'm just an ordinary person and don't have extremely high intelligence, in order to be worthy of Orion, I have been studying very hard since I entered university. Finally, having fulfilled my obsession, I was also admitted as a postgraduate to the same university as him. We were both looking forward to the future. Until when we were about to graduate. He represented the school in a national competition and met Stella, who also has extremely high intelligence. That competition was intense and wonderful. Orion met an opponent for the first time. And there was an excited light in his eyes that I had never seen before. Stella. 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 After that, every time we talked on the phone or met, Orion would involuntarily mention this girl, saying that she was a genius. That she was his only opponent. That she was very different from other girls. And that she had many advantages. Just like now. Orion, who hates liveliness the most, broke his principle and participated in a social gathering for the first time. Most likely, it was because Stella was also there. To be honest, it really hurts my heart. So I didn't hesitate to hang up the phone and didn't want to listen to the voices of the two of them on the other end anymore. They talked one after another. And I couldn't get a word in at all. I don't like this. Maybe Orion guessed that I was a bit angry. So after I hung up the phone, he quickly called me more than a dozen times. But I didn't answer any of them. The next day, having fulfilled my obsession, when I was still sleeping in the dormitory, my roommate suddenly woke me up and pointed at the balcony. Aurora. It seems that your boyfriend is here. Aurora. There's really nothing between me and her. This is a social gathering between the two schools. And it's also in preparation for the next competition. As the team leader, I have to participate. Orion flew over overnight. When he arrived, it was already early morning. The school gate was already closed, and he stood at the school gate all night. He didn't come to look for me in the school until the next morning. Orion's eyes were very tired, and there was a hint of guilt and flattery in his eyes. Aurora. I promise there won't be a next time. Do promises work? I pursed my lips and didn't speak for a long time. But at this moment, Orion's phone rang. We have known each other for 23 years and have been together for 7 years. We are as familiar with each other as we are with ourselves. For example, I can tell just by hearing this ringtone that it was specially set. Orion originally wanted to say something more to me. But the moment the ringtone rang, he quickly lowered his head, took the phone out of his pocket, and answered the call right in front of me. Stella. What's the matter? His voice was tender. And he didn't even realize it himself. But this time, it wasn't Stella's voice on the other end. It was another urgent female voice. sounding a bit anxious and with a hint of a crying tone. Orion. I'm Stella's roommate. When she went to do an experiment today, she was criticized by the tutor. It seems that something happened at home again. And she directly ran out of the school crying. There's still no news of her. I'm afraid something might have happened to her. Can you help me find her? What? Stella is missing. Orion's voice immediately became anxious. And he turned around and walked outside the school. He completely forgot about me, who was still standing there. I counted his steps. 1 step. 2 steps. When he took the 17th step, he finally remembered me, who he had left behind. He stopped in his tracks, turned around, and looked at me. There was an unhidden apology and anxiety in his eyes. Aurora. I have to go back immediately. Stella is too stubborn. I'm afraid something might happen to her. I walked up to him step by step, and held his hand and said softly, she has her own friends, family, and suitors. But we only have each other. Do you really not want me anymore? Maybe my tone of voice was too sad. He felt a bit sorry for me and was about to say something when the phone that he had just hung up rang again. The urgent ringtone seemed to be urging him to make a decision. Finally, having fulfilled my he still let go of my hand. Aurora. Stella is different from you. She is a genius. And geniuses are arrogant. For her to run out crying, something serious must have happened. I have to go and find her. Aurora. I'll come to see you in a couple of days. After saying that, he took 2 steps back, then turned around and ran outside the school without any hesitation. I stood there, watching his back gradually disappear. I suddenly felt I was about to lose Orion completely. For a long time after that, he didn't take the initiative to contact me again. He said it would be in 2 days. But it turned out to be 2 days after another 2 days. There was still no news even until the day of my graduation. Aurora. Today is the graduation photo shoot. Your boyfriend will come, right? My roommate was tidying up her makeup in front of the mirror. She had witnessed my long-distance relationship with Orion over the past 4 years. She knew that we were both orphans and had been relying on each other all the way until now. Today was the day of my university graduation. I had made an agreement with Orion that on the day of my graduation, he would fly back to find me, accompany me to take a graduation photo, and then go back to the Welfare Institute together to visit those children and Mother Dean. Mother Dean had always loved me and Orion very much since we were little. After she knew that I was with him, she even shed tears. She held our hands and said that we would always be family to each other and never part. Also, having so styled my insertion, Mother Dean said, be happy. Somehow, my nose felt a bit sour for no reason. I looked down at the time on my phone. There were less than 2 hours left until the graduation photo shoot, but he still hadn't shown up. Perhaps he had simply forgotten. After the graduation photo shoot, my roommates started packing their things and leaving one by one. I wasn't in a hurry. There weren't many things I needed to take away. According to the previous plan, Orion would come here to accompany me. We would go to the Welfare Institute together, and then go to City A together. I had successfully been recommended for postgraduate studies and would be at the same school as him, so I could go there in advance. But now, I was all alone. I didn't know what I was waiting for either. I just sat on the bed and occasionally looked down at my phone. For a full 5 hours. The mobile operator sent 3 messages. And there were more than a dozen greetings from my roommates. But there was no news from Orion. My hand slipped, and I accidentally opened the moments. As a result, I just saw the photo Orion posted 3 minutes ago. It was a very popular temple in City A. It was said that praying for marriage there was very effective. He took a photo of an empty scene. But in the reflected pond, the figures of 2 people could be vaguely seen. I suddenly remembered when I had just been confirmed for postgraduate studies. Orion pointed at the picture of this temple on his phone and said to me, Aurora. This temple is very effective. When you come to City A after graduation, shall we go to the temple to pray for our marriage together? Unfortunately, after all, he didn't wait for me to reach City A. Instead, he took another girl there. The things that only lovers could do were no longer limited to me. Other girls could do them too. For example, Stella. I went back to the Welfare Institute alone. Mother Dean was very happy to see me. However, her eyes couldn't help but look behind me. I knew what she was expecting. Unfortunately, I would still let her down after all. Orion is too busy at school. So he couldn't come back. When the spring festival comes this year, we will definitely come back and spend it with you. I still couldn't bear it. I couldn't possibly tell her the truth when Mother Dean was looking at me with such eager anticipation. Tell her that Orion had gradually started to like another girl. That would be too cruel. Upon hearing this, a trace of disappointment flashed in Mother Dean's eyes. But after all, she didn't say much. She invited me to have a meal at the Welfare Institute. This Welfare Institute was opened by Mother Dean herself. She paid out of her own pocket and almost used up all her savings. But she never chose to give up, just because there were still more than a dozen children who needed her help. I left half of the money I had saved from working part-time over the past few years for her. She refused and even took out her private savings, trying to give me some money. Aurora, you and Orion are the most promising children in our Welfare Institute. I hope you can study hard, find a good job in the future, and if you have the ability, come back to help these children. I nodded with tears in my eyes. We would all carry on the baton. I didn't plan to change the previous plan. It was not easy for me to be successfully recommended for postgraduate studies and be able to continue my studies at the best university in the country. This was the result of countless diligent days and nights. No matter what happened to my relationship with Orion, I had to continue my studies. I didn't inform Orion and embarked on the journey alone. City A place where I had been coming and going for 4 years. Once, because there was someone I cared about, I would repeatedly check all the travel guides of this city during countless sleepless nights. In the past, it was to better cherish the short time spent with Orion. Now, these things had instead become my ability to survive alone in this city. I felt like laughing a bit. And also like crying a bit. I rented a house on my own. After more than 10 days, Orion finally remembered me. He appeared in front of me in a hurry. There was an indescribable sense of guilt and uneasiness in his eyes. And as soon as he opened his mouth, there was a flustered apology. Aurora, I was really too busy some time ago. There were several competitions at school. And also Stella. Something happened in her family. And she was criticized by the tutor. Her emotions were very unstable. After all, she is a friend, and I was afraid that something would happen to her. So I had to stay with her for more than half a month. I was so busy that I forgot to attend your graduation ceremony. But there is a reason for it. Aurora, you are so understanding. You will definitely forgive me, right? He was holding a large bouquet of flowers in his arms. But they were not the champagne roses he usually gave me. Instead, they were yellow tulips. Orion stuffed the flowers into my arms, smiled, and said in a tone like coaxing a child, "Once you take the flowers, you can't be angry anymore. Okay?" I reached out and fiddled with the tulips. And then asked, "Who taught you to give tulips?" "Stella." Orion replied very naturally. When he mentioned that girl, his eyes became even more tender. He babbled on as if he had endless things to say. "Stella said that most girls don't like roses and think they are tacky. Yellow tulips are very beautiful. So I thought you would like them too and bought them for you specially." Specially? My heart felt a dull pain for no reason. I directly handed the tulips back to him and said very seriously, "But I hate tulips the most. I originally had a younger brother. We were both abandoned and by the roadside. My younger brother was as thin as a cat and almost lost his life. It was Mother Dean who picked us up. I survived. But my younger brother, because he accidentally touched the tulips, had a severe allergic reaction and finally passed away. During the time when my younger brother passed away, I thought the whole world was terrible. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and just endured day by day. I fainted several times. It was Orion. He always stayed by my side, like a meticulous big brother, taking good care of everything about me, making it possible for me to have a ray of light in my dim life again. He finally became another family member to me. So, how could he forget that I hated tulips? Unless He no longer cared about everything related to me. Hearing that I hated tulips, a flash of confusion passed through Orion's eyes. But he still couldn't remember why. After a short silence, he showed a look of sudden realization. Aurora, if you just hate them because Stella picked them, and I think you are being too narrow-minded. She is just an ordinary female friend of mine. You really don't need to be jealous for no reason. I directly threw the flowers at his face. Orion, I'm really starting not to recognize you anymore. I directly drove him away. I closed the door, cutting off his incessant scolding. I sat on the ground leaning against the door frame. The ground was a bit cold. The coldness that seeped into my bones made me shiver involuntarily. Orion finally remembered. His eyes were full of apology. And he came to apologize to me with his group of friends from school. During the previous 4-year-long distant relationship, we had met each other's friends. Orion's roommates also knew our situation and had helped us a lot. Seeing them constantly speaking in Orion's favor, I couldn't immediately show my displeasure. After all, I owed them a favor. Sister Aurora. This guy Orion has just been too tired recently and his mind isn't working well. Even for my sake, forgive him this time. If you don't want to forgive him, it's okay. Just give him a chance to turn over a new leaf. Let him treat you to a meal. And we brothers can also get a free meal. Okay? The boy who spoke was Orion's best friend, Hector. Previously, heading to self-y obsession, I had a serious illness at school and needed to have an operation. The operation cost exceeded the amount we could afford. Orion borrowed money everywhere. And finally, Hector, who came from a well-off family, helped us. So, I really owed him a favor. So after he said these words, I couldn't show my displeasure and refuse his request. It was just a meal. After the meal, we would no longer owe each other anything. And those words that I had hesitated to say for a long time, I also planned to make them clear to Orion tonight. The meal was finished quickly. Orion still thought that I was the little girl who was easy to coax in the past. A bouquet of flowers and a piece of candy. He could easily make me forgive his mistakes. After the meal, Orion's group of friends deliberately left early, leaving me alone with him. Orion took me to a beach, saying that the scenery there was very beautiful and he wanted to take me to pick up seashells. The seaside was also a nice place. Parting on good terms in a beautiful place was the best way to bid farewell to this relationship. But as soon as we arrived at the seaside, a group of girls suddenly rushed over. While they were frolicking, a girl with long hair and a ponytail suddenly turned around and looked at Orion. Orion, why are you here? She walked forward but accidentally bumped into me. I lost my balance, and the two of us fell backward directly. Orion was clearly standing right in front of me, but his gaze had already fallen on another girl. When we both fell, he almost without hesitation quickly reached out and grabbed her, pulling her back into his arms. With the inertia, I fell heavily on the ground. My right hand was rubbed hard by the stones, and the whole palm was skinned. Aurora. After realizing that I had fallen, Orion quickly bent down to help me up only after making sure that the girl in front of him was standing steadily. Does your palm hurt from the fall? I'll go and buy you some medicine. The whole palm was filled with dense pain. The wound was stained with dust and needed to be thoroughly cleaned before it could heal well. Orion had already run towards the nearby store, and I didn't have time to call him. Among the group of girls in front of me, except for the one who bumped into me, the other girls all scattered. You are Aura? As soon as she spoke, I recognized who she was. Stella, that girl who also had the reputation of being a genius, was gradually occupying the heart of my boyfriend, who was still mine for now. I suddenly wanted to know. For such a smart and beautiful girl, when she clearly knew that the other person had a girlfriend, was she really just maintaining the appropriate distance between friends? Or was she subtly testing? Together with Orion, trampling on the edge of morality. Before I could speak, Stella took the lead and said, so what if you're childhood sweethearts? So what if you've depended on each other? Aurora, you're nothing more than family to each other at most. Orion's feelings for you are just treating you as a younger sister. If you were smart enough, you should have taken the initiative to break up instead of occupying the position of his girlfriend and being annoying. Well, I got it. She's not an innocent person. She's someone who clearly knows that the other person has a girlfriend but still wants to get involved. A mistress. So what? Not to be outdone, I retorted directly. I'm in a proper relationship. Which is better than some people who insist on coveting someone else's boyfriend. Aurora. Stella's face turned extremely ugly. She gave me a fierce glare, and her eyes seemed to want to eat me alive on the spot. Since you're so confident, then I'll show you who the real winner is. After saying this, Stella let out a cold snort and then left with a flick of her sleeve. Orion, who ran back with the ointment, looked around immediately. I said, "Stop looking." I drove Stella away by scolding her. Drove her away by scolding? Orion's voice immediately rose a lot, and there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. His tone was filled with indescribable blame. Stella is a nice girl. She has an easygoing personality. Why did you scold her for no reason? Is it just because I helped her up earlier and you fell down? But she's a genius. Her hands need to make achievements in experiments and can't get injured. I looked down at my hand and said, "So, am I supposed to get injured? At least, the farce ended with me breaking up with him. It's really boring." I had been thinking about it for a long time before. Even though I was going to say the word break up, but we came from the same welfare institute. Even if we were no longer boyfriend-girlfriend, we were still family who depended on each other. I hoped he could also understand the principle of separating amicably. However, he still let me down after all. When I proposed to break up, Orion was stunned for a moment and didn't agree. "Just because I said a few words to you, you want to break up with me? Aurora, we've been together for so many years. How can you just say you don't want me anymore? What do you take me for?" After saying this, his tone was very excited, as if I had done something to betray him. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but suddenly thought it was unnecessary. Should I be indignant and point out his change of heart? Then I would need to recall the whole process of his betrayal of me bit by bit, and it would be really painful. Moreover, would it make any difference whether I said it or not? No. There would be no change. Orion was really angry. He said, "I don't want you to be so unreasonable anymore. I hope the obedient and sensible Aurora from before can come back. Tonight. You should think about it carefully by yourself." After saying this, he left without looking back, leaving me alone on this beach. I didn't have any change with me. My phone also fell out of my pocket when I fell just now. It hit a rock and couldn't be turned on. The sea breeze at night was a bit cold. I couldn't help but wrap my coat tighter, held back the tears that I wanted to shed, and walked back step by step. The night was really long. I didn't know how long I had walked. But the more I walked, the more I felt that the relationship over the past few years was like a joke. Stella said she would show me who the real winner was. This wasn't a joke. Early the next morning, I just got back to the apartment. Orion was leaning against the outside of the apartment door, with his head down and looking a bit drowsy. When he saw me appear, he frowned slightly and immediately started to blame me. "You didn't come back all night. What were you doing? Could it be that you want to break up with me because you've fallen in love with another boy? And you went to find him last night?" With a slap sound. As soon as he finished speaking, I didn't hesitate to slap him. "Orion, I'm not as heartless as you. And I will definitely not get involved with other boys when I have a boyfriend." What kind of person did he take me for by saying that? Then why did you come back so late? Is it because you didn't want to see me? Or is it because you saw Stella yesterday and deliberately got jealous? He reached out and gently touched the slap mark on his face and continued to question me. I directly took out my phone from my pocket and slapped it on his face. When Stella bumped into me, my phone fell out and hit a rock, and it broke. I didn't have any cash with me either. You left me there alone, so I had to walk back by myself. "Orion, are you satisfied with this answer?" He was silent, and his eyes were quickly filled with guilt. "Aurora, I didn't mean that. I was just worried about your safety. I was wrong last night. I didn't expect you to bring up the breakup, so I was a bit angry. I'm sorry. Really sorry. It's all my fault. Will you forgive me one more time?" I sneered with the corner of my mouth. Before I could speak, Orion's phone rang suddenly. It was that specially set ringtone again. When the call was connected, it was still another strange female voice, crying in a panic. Orion. Stella's brother came to the school to find her today. Stella is in a very bad mood now. She's completely broken down and keeps saying she wants to jump into the lake. Please come and save her. There was time to make a phone call, but no time to find someone to save Stella at school. Sorry, I'm thinking of a girl with the most despicable thoughts, but I really can't help it. As soon as he heard this, Orion's eyes were full of panic that couldn't be hidden. He immediately turned around and ran out. Without saying a word, he disappeared around the corner in just a few seconds. I let out a long sigh. After walking all night, I didn't feel sleepy either. Well, why not just follow and take a look? There was a circle of people around the lake. There were tears on Stella's face, looking as if she had lost all hope in life. She tried to break through the crowd and jump into the lake. Orion quickly rushed over and grabbed her arm. Stella suddenly became excited and started hitting Orion's arm frantically. With a crying voice, she said, "Leave me alone. Leave me alone. The only family member I have now doesn't want me anymore. If it weren't for me, my parents wouldn't have had a car accident. If it weren't for me, our family wouldn't have fallen apart. My brother hates me so much now and wants to cut off a relationship with me. A person as terrible as me doesn't deserve to live in this world at all. No. Stella, you're very nice." Orion hugged her tightly, pressed her head against his chest, and tried to soothe her. "Stella, you're the most wonderful girl I've ever met. You're smart and brave. You'll boldly strive for what you want. You're as passionate as a rose and attracted me at the first sight. As for that car accident, no one could have predicted it, and it's not your fault at all. You don't have to blame yourself for it until now. Okay?" Stella shook her head while crying, "But my brother doesn't want me anymore. I don't have a family anymore. Orion. I don't have any shoulders to lean on anymore. I really can't go on living." After saying this, Stella used all her strength to push Orion away and was about to jump into the lake. Orion immediately jumped into the lake and then fished her out. The two of them were all wet and hugged each other tightly. There were also tears in Orion's eyes. He stared at Stella in his arms, his eyes full of pity and love. "No, you'll have me from now on. Stella, my shoulder is available for you to lean on." "Really?" Cough cough. "Really?" Stella choked on some water. But after hearing this, there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Orion nodded, his eyes full of affection. "You don't know that I've already fallen in love with you." At this point, there was a cheer from the whole audience. The incident of jumping into the lake that had previously caused panic had now turned into a large-scale confession scene. Everyone was cheering and witnessing the successful hand-in-hand of a happy couple. I mixed in the crowd and quietly watched all this happen. I watched Stella lean in Orion's arms and then give me a provocative look. Well, I lost. I lost completely with no room for redemption. With the incident of jumping into the lake first and a confession later. Therefore, this matter caused a great stir. And almost all the schools in City A were discussing Orion and Stella enthusiastically. Some people said, "The combination of two geniuses is indeed a match made in heaven." Such an ordinary me should actually have taken the initiative to withdraw earlier. Stella is not a nice girl. I'm very sure of that. I took back the slight guilt I might have felt before for thinking that my thoughts were despicable. She took the initiative to add me on WeChat. There was no note. And she just said she had something urgent to talk to me about. So I approved the friend request. But she didn't say a word. She just posted a moment in the moments section 2 minutes later. The attached picture, the profile of the two of them kissing. The caption, "It's a predestined and good marriage." According to the palace intrigue dramas I've watched, this should be a blatant provocation. She wants to see me sad and upset. Or maybe even jump up in a fit of anger. In short, no matter which one it is, as long as I reveal the slightest strange emotion, I will really become a clown. I don't want to be such an ugly person. So I blocked her in return, just pretending that I had never seen it. And it wouldn't affect my mood either. As a result, that afternoon, Orion came to question me. holding Stella's hand. You were the one who proposed the breakup first. I haven't done anything to betray you. Even if we're not lovers, we're still family. Stella is my girlfriend now. She took the initiative to add you. So why were you so impolite as to block her? Stella also shed some tears appropriately and showed a wronged expression. Yes, having fulfilled my ancestor. Are you a Juan? Do you have any opinions about me? It doesn't matter if you do. But you absolutely can't quarrel with Orion because of me. I stared straight at her and then gave her a thumbs up. Stella, you shouldn't be doing research. You should be acting. Because of my words. We parted on bad terms again. After all, they were a couple who had just confirmed their relationship. He said, Aurora, you've changed so much that I hardly recognize you now. Let's give each other some space to think calmly. I hope you can become the sensible girl you used to be. I ignored him and closed the door behind me. I really didn't have the energy to entangle with them anymore. Because it's really meaningless. In the past, we might not have been lovers. But we were definitely still family. But now, looking at it, I suddenly felt that the unbreakable family bond that we had depended on each other for in the past seemed to have started to have cracks. And these cracks couldn't be repaired. I took out the phone that had just been repaired, found all of Orion's contact information, and then blocked them, one by one. At this point, it was completely over. I didn't cry. Maybe I had already prepared myself mentally from the very beginning. When everything finally happened, I actually felt a sense of relief. I didn't have to live in fear, waiting for that day to come anymore. I have my own rhythm of life. I can't rely on my parents like other classmates do. I can only rely on myself. So before the start of the new semester in September, I need to work part-time outside to earn more tuition fees and living expenses for myself. I'm very busy. And business fills my life. It leaves me no time to think about things that don't really matter. However, since we are now postgraduate students at the same school, some gossip still reaches me in various ways. For example, Orion and Stella, who both successfully got recommended for postgraduate studies, decided to go on a spontaneous trip. Orion, who used to be very thrifty, generously bought many gifts for Stella with a wave of his hand. The two of them went to several cities, filmed vlogs along the way, and flaunted their happiness in their moments. After hearing this, I just smiled it off. Then I continued to work, kept trying to earn money, and waited for the start of the semester. I'm not smart enough to study and play at the same time like they do. So after the semester started, I immersed myself in the laboratory, learned from my supervisor. And I even wished I could eat live in the laboratory. Stella bumped into me several times. Whenever we met unexpectedly, she would always show off a necklace or other jewelry she was wearing. You've been with Orion for so long. Has he ever given you any decent jewelry? After saying that, she deliberately scanned me up and down with her eyes. Nothing at all. It seems that he really doesn't like you. So he doesn't even want to buy you any jewelry. I could clearly tell that these were sarcastic words. Jewelry. I really didn't have much. Both of us are orphans. And we also want to help Mother Dean. So we always don't want to spend the extra money casually and want to save it for unexpected needs. Orion came to see me several times later. After all, we grew up together. He thought that no matter how ugly the quarrel was, I would still cherish that bond of kinship. But I have truly let go of it completely. I don't need his so-called way out. And I don't want to make up either. A long time passed. I still immersed myself in the laboratory all day long and took part-time jobs in my free time. I studied and saved money at the same time. I had no time for a relationship and just wanted to focus on the things at hand. As for Orion, he was having a passionate relationship and had lost his former diligence. Even in the competition where everyone thought he could win the championship before, he unexpectedly performed poorly and only got the third place. But all these things have nothing to do with me. Before the start of the third year of my postgraduate studies, I specially went back to the Welfare Institute. Mother Dean wasn't in good health and had been hospitalized several times. She was always worried that the medical treatment fees were too high. So she secretly ran back to the institute. There was no other way. The oldest girl in the Welfare Institute could only call me I took Mother Dean back to the hospital. Lying on the hospital bed, she sighed. I'm worried about those children. I don't know how they are doing when I'm not at home. They are all very sensible. Even without Mother Dean around, these children can take good care of themselves. Since she couldn't run away under my watchful eye, she could only lean against the hospital bed and start chatting with me in a rambling way. As people get old, they always like to recall the past. Aurora, when you first came to the Welfare Institute, you were very timid, but you were very brave when it came to protecting your younger brother. It's a pity that he didn't get to grow up. Otherwise, you would have one more family member. Fortunately, hadn't Fosteltly, you and Orion had had a good relationship since you were children. And now you are boyfriend and girlfriend. After you graduate, get married first. I'm not in good health. And I don't know how long I can live. I really want to hold your child. My hand that was peeling the apple suddenly stopped. I had never told Mother Dean the news that Orion and I had broken up. Before, I didn't want to add to her troubles. Now, I'm even more afraid that it will affect her mood while she's recuperating. So I nodded. And you should take good care of yourself. Be good. And don't always think about going back. If you don't recover well, how can you see the child of Orion and me? A look of relief appeared on her face. I'm really happy to see you happy. Aurora, you are a good girl. And you will be happy. Somehow, my eyes felt hot. And I couldn't help but want to cry. I was afraid that she would notice. So I found an excuse to run out and sat on the bench in the corridor, trying my best to hold back this sad emotion. Aurora? Orion's voice suddenly rang in my ears. I raised my eyes and saw Orion holding a basket of fruits in his hand. He was standing in front of me, slightly bending over and staring at me. We hadn't seen each other for a long time. A few months? Or more than a year? News about him always reached my ears by all kinds of coincidences and accidents. But as for him, I really hadn't seen him much. Orion later tried to make peace with me. Even if we were just considered as family, we shouldn't be so cold to each other. But I didn't want to. So when I suddenly saw him today, I didn't know what to say for a moment. Aurora, I heard that Mother Dean is ill. So I came back to visit her. Orion spoke first. He seemed a bit different from a few years ago. Probably the youthfulness on him had faded, and his eyes were much calmer. He just stared at me quietly, with emotion surging in his eyes. And I didn't know what he was thinking. Seeing that he was about to push open the door of the ward, I quickly stopped him. Orion, Mother Dean doesn't know that we've broken up yet. She's not in good health, and if she knows, she will definitely be worried. So just act as if everything is normal and go along with what she says. Orion was a bit silent, but he finally nodded. I still wasn't reassured, so I went into the ward with him. When Mother Dean saw us walking in together, a look of joy appeared in her eyes. It's rare for you two to come and see me together. Before, Aurora always came back alone. And I was worried that you two had a quarrel. But I didn't dare to ask. But now that I see you two are fine, I'm relieved. You're just thinking too much. The doctor told you to rest more and not worry all the time. I poured a glass of water for Mother Dean. Orion put down the fruit basket and then took the glass of water from my hand. I didn't refuse. At least in front of Mother Dean. We had to act it out thoroughly. Because both of us were there. Mother Dean started talking about the past again. And her eyes were full of memories. Aurora. At that time, among all the children in the yard, you liked to follow Orion around. And Orion. I brought him back when he was a child and raised him with care. But he was indifferent by nature and didn't like to interact with people much. However, after Aurora came, he took the initiative to stay with Aurora. Just like a big brother. You two used to stick together when you were children. The high school teacher called me and said that you two were in a puppy love and asked me to pay attention. You have no idea how happy I was at that time. The two children I cared about the most could rely on each other. And it was an unbreakable reliance. I listened carefully to what Mother Dean said. My eyes were a bit red. And my nose was also a bit sour. As for Orion, he also seemed to be lost in memories. Remembering the bits and pieces of our life in the Welfare Institute, in that not-so-big yard. There were traces of our life everywhere. At that time, Orion, who was only 12 years old, pointed at the sky outside the fence and promised me, "Aurora, we will have a more expansive sky in the future. But no matter what, I will protect you and will never bully you in this life. Do you believe me?" Aurora, who was 11 years old, believed her big brother Orion very much. She thought that in the short few decades of life, she would always be with her most important big brother Orion. Unfortunately, Orion turned to look at me, and a look of guilt that couldn't be hidden appeared in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but considering that Mother Dean was there, he finally swallowed all the words back. Mother Dean was a bit tired. Before going to sleep, she repeatedly told Orion, "Orion, you've always been smart. Aurora is younger and more sensitive in nature, but she really likes you. You must never let her down." Orion nodded seriously. "I will definitely not let her or down." Boom. A dull thunder suddenly sounded in the gloomy sky. Probably. It's because someone is lying. After Mother Dean fell asleep, Orion and I left the ward together. In the corridor, he stopped me first. "I'm sorry. Aurora. I promised you before that I would protect you well in this life and never let you down. But I still broke my promise after all." He seemed very guilty, with his shoulders slightly hunched and his head lowered. I shook my head, and there wasn't much emotional turmoil in my heart. It's been a long time. Talking about these things that don't matter anymore is meaningless. If it wasn't for Mother Dean's sake, perhaps we shouldn't have met again in this life. To use a popular sentence on the internet, how is it possible for two people who truly loved each other in the past to become ordinary friends without any grudges after breaking up? Actually, I hate Orion quite a lot. When he was about to say something more, his phone rang, and it was still that exclusive ringtone. Stella, his girlfriend. But this time, it seemed a bit different from the previous many times. Orion looked at the caller ID, and a barely noticeable look of annoyance appeared in his eyes and brows. After answering the phone, his tone was even more impatient. "Stella, you call dozens of times a day. What on earth do you want?" The voice on the other end of the phone was very loud, so even though the speakerphone wasn't turned on, I could hear it clearly. "What do I want?" You ran back without saying a word. Don't think I don't know that. Or also went back. Did you go back to visit the patient? Or did you want to rekindle the relationship? Orion, since you chose me in the first place, you should understand that there's no possibility between you and her in this life. I'm calling you just to remind you, not to forget whose boyfriend you are. Orion's face looked very ugly, as if he was trying his best to suppress his emotions. Only after listening to this did he hang up the phone. "What? Did you have a quarrel?" I was somewhat mean-spirited. I was quite happy to see them arguing. It wasn't that I thought I still had a chance. I just simply didn't want them to be happy so easily. Orion nodded, his eyes full of annoyance. "Stella is a crazy person. She cries at the slightest provocation and threatens me. She doesn't want to work even when I ask her to. She just wants me to support her all day long. She also posts on moments every day to show off our love. And she blames me for not being capable enough to earn a lot of money. She's also very suspicious all the time, and I'm almost driven crazy by her." Looking at his expression when he said these words, I can't remember what Orion looked like when he confessed his love to Stella with deep affection. I suddenly felt a bit emotional. I shook my head, trying to shake off all these messy thoughts. But when I turned around and was about to leave, Orion stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. He stared at me as if he had something difficult to say and didn't know how to start. I broke free from his hand, without any hesitation, and strode forward and left. "Aurora." He suddenly called my name. I paused slightly in my steps. Orion took a deep breath, with a hint of nostalgia and regret, and said, "If at the beginning, if we hadn't broken up, would we be very happy now?" I turned to look at him and said, "Orion, there are no ifs in this world." The condition of Mother Dean was temporarily stabilized. I also returned to City A. There is only 1 year left until graduation. I don't plan to pursue a doctoral degree either. I just want to find a job, start earning a lot of money, take care of the other younger brothers and sisters in the welfare institute, and share the heavy responsibilities on Mother Dean's shoulders. The last year is always very busy. However, Orion came to find me several times. Sometimes he brought the flowers I liked, and sometimes some snacks that we had eaten together in our childhood. But I didn't accept any of them. I can earn money to buy the flowers I like, and I can also eat those snacks that I once liked. I can do all these things by myself. He encountered obstacles everywhere with me, and didn't get any favor from Stella either. When it was almost time to graduate, I heard my junior schoolmate from the same department chatting about the gossip in the school, and Orion and Stella were among them. Senior sister. Do you know Orion? He is the senior who was once known as a genius. He is handsome and smart, and his girlfriend is also a genius. The two of them are really a perfect match. I just don't know why. When such a well-matched couple got together, they actually ended up like that? I hadn't paid attention to their news for a long time, so I didn't know what had happened recently. What kind of ending? The junior schoolmate leaned close to me and whispered. It is said that Orion did a research himself. The research result could have been sold for a lot of money originally. The contract was already signed. But Stella secretly sold it behind his back. She sold one research result to two companies. The contract clearly stated in black and white that a large sum of money needs to be compensated. For this reason, Orion and Stella had a big quarrel and even fought in the end. Stella was sued by the first company for stealing business secrets, and she is estimated to be imprisoned for no less than 3 years. And Orion, although he didn't do it, it was after all the contract he signed. The amount of compensation is too large, and his life is completely ruined. Stella was sentenced to 3 years in prison for suspected theft of business secrets. Orion has to pay an astronomical liquidated damages and will also be blacklisted in the industry. He will never have a chance to make a comeback in his life. I didn't expect such a sudden ending. My college roommate knew all the inside information and has always kept in touch with me. After learning about this matter, she called me that night and said, "Aurora, hearing that he is so down and out now, will you still be sad?" I thought about it seriously. Well, I respect everyone's fate. And it wasn't me who caused his tragedy. Hearing that I wasn't sad, my roommate let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Fortunately, I was afraid that you would still remember the bond in the Welfare Institute and would be soft-hearted towards him. No, I won't. From the moment I took the initiative to break up, I have never thought of turning back." Orion was really down and out. He desperately borrowed money everywhere. But that astronomical liquidated damages was like a bottomless pit that could never be filled. And I, who happened to graduate, successfully found a good job. We didn't have any contact originally. However, Mother Dean's sudden fainting made us have to meet again. Advanced gastric cancer? I looked at the report handed to me by the attending doctor, and my heart ached as if it was being gripped. Mother Dean's health has not been very good these years, and I couldn't stay with her all the time. The hidden desk report, I didn't see it until now. Mother Dean didn't have much expression on her face, but her face was terrifyingly pale. She smiled and shook her head. People will die when they get old. Whether it's natural or due to illness, there's no difference. Aurora, don't be sad. I've already come to terms with it. She reached out and gently touched my face. I still have some regrets. You've just graduated, and I haven't been able to see you marry Orion and have a little grandson. My voice choked up. I opened my mouth but found that I couldn't say anything. Orion didn't come back with me, so his sudden appearance caught me a bit off guard. He stood behind me, held my hand in front of Mother Dean, and then looked at me and said, "Aurora, I'm here. If you're really sad, you can lean on my shoulder. I will always be your brother Orion." In front of Mother Dean, I couldn't refuse him sternly because that would reveal the truth. I just leaned on him superficially. Seeing Mother Dean showing a relieved expression, I could also breathe a sigh of relief. But she was really tired. She spent her whole life helping others and taking care of a group of children without a home. She took out all her savings, ate the cheapest food, just to send these children to school. Silly mother, who only knows how to give of herself. At Mother Dean's funeral, many children who had already left the Welfare Institute came back to see her. At the funeral, Many people were sobbing uncontrollably. And the last words she said to me were, "Aurora, Mom hopes you'll be happy." Yes, hubby, I will be happy. And I will also be happy. After finishing Mother Dean's funeral, there was an elder sister who was older than me. She took the initiative to take on the heavy responsibility of taking care of these children, taking over Mother Dean's role and guarding that small world. Originally, hadn't felt like I was the one who offered first. But that elder sister touched my head and then gently shook her head. "You're still young. Go and take a look at the outside world first. If you're tired one day, come back. Home will always be open to you." Okay. And I will work hard to make money and earn tuition fees for the children. When I went back to work, Orion stopped me. He took me back to the Welfare Institute and to that small room where we had once slept together. On that small bed, one child after another had lived. But the marks carved on the wall were still intact. That was the first promise made by Orion at the age of 17 to Aurora at the age of 16. It read, Orion, will protect her or for a lifetime. I didn't speak immediately. I just listened to the sounds on the other side, as if in a KTV. Among the noisy sounds, some people were singing, and some people who were drunk were shouting wildly. There was a hint of eager expectation in his eyes, along with some indescribable emotions. "Aurora, I regret it. These years, I've been going around in circles. I suddenly realized that I was the most relaxed only when I was with you. I had that simple happiness for many years. Later. But now I know I was wrong. I will work hard to pay off the debt and then give you a better life again. I will accompany you to take care of these children. Can you give me another chance?" I didn't speak immediately. I just reached out and stroked that line of words. I have never doubted the sincerity with which Orion carved this line of words at that time. Because I have always liked Orion at the age of 17. The brother who loved me the most and lived in my memories. But now, the person standing in front of me, he just has the same appearance and name. But he is an Orion who has lost his soul. Without a soul, there are no longer those old longings. Without longings, there is no longer the original affection. A man who can't leave me with any longings or affection and has betrayed me. Even if I, Aurora, am not successful, I will definitely not turn back to pick up the garbage. Orion, if you had any backbone, you shouldn't have come to try to keep me. Because I would look down on him. Perhaps my gaze was too straightforward, filled with blatant disappointment and disgust. Finally, hadn't fulfilled what I'd say. It made him feel an indescribable sense of shame. And he almost fled in front of me. I don't know where he will go. And I don't care. I only know in my, Aurora's, life, there will no longer be a person named Orion appearing.